an oil tanker off Rio de Janeiro. Royal Dutch Shell and Statoil of Norway were leaders in the country's second auction in recent weeks to explore untapped oil reserves. Bruno Keller, Reuters. Rio de Janeiro, in a sign of confidence in Brazil as a worthy place to invest, several international oil companies on Friday successfully bid for deepwater drilling rights in some of the richest oil fields of the Western Hemisphere. Royal Dutch Shell and Statoil of Norway were leaders in the country's second auction in recent weeks to explore untapped oil reserves in what amounted to a success for the free market initiative of President Michel Temer, who is highly unpopular. The auction was part of the government's effort to open up oil fields to foreign multinationals. But it also was a test to see if oil companies were still interested in pursuing expensive deepwater projects, given that oil prices are still relatively depressed, though rising in recent weeks. ExxonMobil, the leading American oil company, was the biggest block winner in the auction last month, and it again won a bid on Friday as part of a Statoil consortium. 8 blocks in total in the Campos and Santos basins were offered at the auction, held in Rio de Janeiro. State-owned Petrobras, which has been at the center of a scandal in recent years, won 3 blocks, with BP as a partner in 2 of them. Winning bids were determined by one criterion: what share of the oil produced would go to the state. Each of the 8 blocks potentially has at least 1 billion barrels of recoverable reserves, according to Ricardo Bedregal, the director of upstream Latin America for the global energy consultancy IHS Markit. Lucio Pravati, a representative from Shell, placing an offer during the auction in Rio de Janeiro. It was the first auction devoted exclusively to pre-salt fields, the deepest Brazilian offshore oil fields. Pilar Olivares, Reuters. Brazil currently has 14 billion barrels of proven reserves, according to the National Agency of Petroleum, known as the ANP in Portuguese. The auction Friday was the first devoted exclusively to the deepest Brazilian offshore oil fields, which sit beneath a thick layer of salt, since 2013. It also followed Brazil's easing of restrictions on foreign companies. Early in the century, Brazil was among the hottest oil regions in the world. But the global energy landscape has changed significantly in recent years, with oil prices stabilizing at levels well below those of a decade ago. Mexico and other countries are also opening up their oil fields, and the United States has produced a glut with a shale oil boom. Many experts wondered if international companies would still show interest in Brazil. 16 companies signed up to take part in the auction, including most of the major American and European companies. Oil experts say a key reason for the interest was that exploration in the deepwater oil fields, known as pre-salt, for their blanket of salt, has become less risky and cheaper over the years. The costs have fallen because of technology, said David Zylbastan, a former head of ANP. Pre-salt today is much more competitive and much more productive than was ever imagined, he said. Mr. Bedregal concurred, giving credit to Petrobras. Through technology and better knowledge of geology, Petrobras and their partners have managed to reduce costs, he said. He said that in the early days, an exploration well for pre-salt fields would cost up to $250 million, but that the expense had now fallen to $90 million. On average, he estimated the break-even price of oil for pre-salt construction projects is $35 a barrel. Clifford Krause contributed, reporting from Houston. A version of this article appears in print on October 28, 2017, on page B2 of the New York edition with the headline "Brazil Draws Broad Interest in Offshore Drilling Rights."